It's the reason you're not getting promoted because your boss keeps stringing you along with excuses and it's beginning to feel like instead of promoting you, they're just trying to stop you from leaving. Well, recently I asked what the biggest problem holding you back at work is, and loads of you told me the exact same frustration. You're told to take initiative, but when you do try and improve things, the company doesn't take your suggestion very seriously. So in this video, I'm going to take one person's situation and I'm going to take you through a simple system that will show you how to actually get your boss to take the promotion conversation seriously, how to make your work travel upwards so leadership actually see it, and how to become the person the business wants to move up, not the person they keep trapped doing more work for the same pay. So this is an email I got from Angela, and her situation is certainly going to sound very familiar to you. So I'm going to explain what her problem is, then I'll explain exactly why she isn't getting promoted and what she needs to do instead to fix it. So Angela says, "Hi Josh, I'm hoping you can give me an outside perspective because I feel like I'm losing my mind here. I'm a senior finance controller and over the last few months I've been trying to make our weekly reporting more efficient. I rebuilt a piece of our process and I've cut it down by about 2 hours a day consistently. I've been using this reclaimed time to upskill and start scoping improvements in some of our other recurring deliverables. I had my quarterly review last week and I was really excited to show this because my boss is always talking about finding efficiencies and improving things, so I thought he'd be really impressed. But my manager's reaction completely shocked me. He basically told me I shouldn't be doing this type of optimization because it makes the team look like they weren't working hard enough. He also scolded me a bit because he said if I save time, I should use it to do more work, not use it to upskill. I suggested then that I could share the process with the team, and he said that he'd rather I don't because it might create friction. I then raised the topic of moving into a manager role, and he said there's no budget right now, let's revisit that in the future. Then, after that, when discussing what I should be doing, he said I should take some initiative and support the company's goals. So now I'm stuck because isn't that exactly what I was doing? I thought the whole point was to create leverage and improve our business operations. I genuinely thought that this project would show leadership and initiative. Instead, it feels like I'm being punished for being more effective. I don't know how to move forward without upsetting people, but I also don't want to just sit here and wait for a random future timeline that may never come. What would you do?" So, wow, Angela, I can sympathize with that frustration. It's one I bet a lot of you have felt. You're told to do more work, but when you do improve things, your boss is like, no, wait, why did you do that? But the good news is the problem is simple and easy to fix with just a small change. So I'll first explain what the problem is and how you should approach these situations in future. And the first thing to understand is why your ideas always get rejected. Now, just to be super clear, I'm not defending the manager here. I'm not saying they handled it particularly well, but I am going to show you why this stuff happens and how you can flip it so next time your effort actually works in your favor. Okay, so let's shift perspective for a second. A lot of people think that companies will do anything to save money or improve the bottom line. Like, if you found a cheaper way, surely they'll jump right on it, right? But no, that's not how companies or people actually behave. And you can think of it like this. Suppose you switch gym to one on the other side of town and it's 25% cheaper. On paper, that's an obvious smart move you should make because you'll save money by doing it. But there's a lot of other things you need to consider. What about the parking? You're going to lose your trainer. You've got no friends there. It's a 40-minute round trip. And then suddenly, it doesn't sound like such a good idea anymore, does it? And that's what people forget at work. Efficiency sounds good, but real decisions aren't made in spreadsheets. They're made in meeting rooms, which carry risk, politics, trust, familiarity, friction. All of this is baked into whether a decision moves forward or not. So Angela's idea might have been great on paper, but if it exposed the team or created discomfort or looked like she was stepping on others' toes, then yeah, of course the boss backed away from it. That's how most people react to a sudden change. They retreat. But, and this is the whole point of this video, if you understand what else they're weighing up behind the scenes, you can pitch the exact same idea in a way that feels safer, more aligned, and will actually get buy-in. So next, I'll break down what those hidden factors are and how to use them to make sure your ideas don't just get heard, but rewarded too. Alright, so have you ever seen a decision that leadership made and you didn't agree with it, or it sounds counterintuitive? Well, that's before Well, that's because before any idea gets a yes in a company, there are three big types of risk that are being assessed. And only if the idea passes these risks will it potentially happen. So when you see a management decision that seems like the obvious bad choice, well, it's usually because you were unaware of the hidden risks that made it actually the sensible choice. And if you want to reach the next level of your career, then you need to understand what those risks are and learn how to present your ideas in a way that overcomes these risks. So I'm going to walk you through all three types of risks now, and then show you a simple way to package your ideas around these risks, so they actually stand a chance of being heard. So let's start with the first risk, which is usually the biggest killer of change: interpersonal risk. So back to Angela's story. She built this process that saves 25% of the team's time, which is great on paper, right? But let's consider this change from the perspective of her co-workers. I want you to imagine this. You've been grinding away at your job for years, long days, tight deadlines. Then one morning, the boss pulls you into a meeting and he says, "Great news, team. Angela's found a way for all of you to do 25% more work for the same amount of pay in less time. Isn't that amazing, everyone? Let's all give Angela a round of applause." Do you think anyone is actually going to applaud Angela? No, they're going to hate her. Angela just became the office villain. Like, she didn't mean to, but that's how it's going to come across. Because here's the uncomfortable truth that a lot of people forget: any idea that makes other people look bad or threatens their comfort is going to cause friction. And once that happens, the team's dynamic starts to crack. People will stop collaborating, resentment will build, someone might even leave. So yeah, even if the idea does save time or money, it can still be rejected because it destabilizes the team dynamic, which causes more problems than any efficiency gains you would get by implementing the solution. But there is good news. There's actually a really easy way to manage that kind of risk before it kicks off, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Okay, so let's look at the second type of risk. And this one's important because it explains why some of your biggest improvements might actually backfire. And it's called expectation inflation. Now, this one isn't about your teammates. This is the risk your manager is thinking about, because they're the one who has to answer upward. And if you want to start getting rewarded properly at work, this is exactly the kind of thing you need to understand. And this is how it works. So in any decent sized company, the senior leadership team can't possibly keep track of what every person is doing. There are hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands employees in some cases. So instead of managing individuals, they manage metrics. So they set KPIs, or key performance indicators, which, as the name suggests, are simply a way to measure whether a department is performing well. These could be things like the total sales made, or the lifetime value, or error rate, whatever aligns to the business goals. And here's the key thing: those targets must always go up. That's how the company grows. If you hit 25 sales last month, well, this month's goal is 27. You hit 27, great, next month do 30. It's a built-in assumption that performance should always improve. So where's the risk with this? Well, let's go back to Angela. So this is the level of her team's performance. Angela makes an improvement, her team suddenly performs 25% better. On the surface, that sounds like success, but what's actually going to happen is that improvement will show up in the department's KPIs. Those KPIs will go upwards. The leadership team will see that increase and then assume that that level is now the new normal. So they give you an even higher target to hit next time. Suddenly, the department is expected to sustain that performance and exceed it. And if they don't, well, even though they're doing better than before, it still looks like they're underperforming because they didn't hit this brand new target, which means that instead of being rewarded for being 25% better, Angela's team could end up being questioned for missing a 30% target they never even asked for. And that's expectation inflation. It's when a one-time improvement becomes a permanent benchmark, and people forget how far you actually moved the needle in the first place. Now, this doesn't mean you should hold back your best ideas, but it does mean you need to think about how and when you surface those results. And in a minute, I'll show you a really smart way to do that. But first, there's one more risk to understand, and it's one that makes every manager nervous, even if they never admit it. All right, so let's look at the third risk. And for this one, I want to tell you something that happened when I had my first child. Now, my mum, love her, she was full of advice constantly. Like, hold his head like this. No, don't do that. Why don't you try feeding him this? Put him here instead. She meant well, but inside I was thinking, Mum, can you please just stay out of my hair? Because even though she was trying to be helpful, and she was, it made me feel like I was doing everything wrong. And that is exactly what we call exposure risk. It's when your suggestion, even if completely valid, implies that someone else should have been doing it that way all along. They missed something or they got it wrong. So instead of being seen as helpful, it makes people feel exposed or defensive. Now, let's bring this back to Angela. Her change improved the process by 25%, objectively better. But think about how that might land with her team or the higher ups. It doesn't just mean more work for them, it also carries this silent accusation that they weren't doing it right the whole time, which can sting even if that's not what was intended. But this isn't just about Angela's co-workers, it's a risk for the manager as well. Because if he brings that improvement upstairs and says, hey, we've made things 25% more efficient, then do you know what happens next? The question could very easily become, well, why weren't you doing it like this the whole time? Which then puts his own judgment under the spotlight. Maybe he missed it. Maybe he's not across the details. Maybe he's not as capable as people assumed. So you can see Angela's position. The change was good. It made things faster, but she missed how that improvement might feel to others and the risks associated with such a change. And when she confronted the manager in a performance review with this change, there was too much risk to think about, and so it just gets rejected. Not because it wouldn't work, but because it triggered too many risks all at the same time. So if you've ever had a great idea knocked back and you couldn't understand why, then this is why. But the good news is you don't have to play this game blindly. There's actually a really simple way to present your ideas in future so they feel aligned, supportive, and easy to say yes to. And that's exactly what I'm going to show you now. All right, so now that we understand the three types of risk, let's talk about how to actually navigate them. Because most ideas don't fail because they're bad, they fail because they're poorly introduced. So what I want to give you now is a really simple 4-step model that makes your ideas easier to accept and harder to reject, and far more likely to lead to the recognition or promotion you should get by having these good ideas. And this model is made up of 4 S words: seed, socialize, solution, shield. Now let's go through them one by one. Seed, well, this is where most people get it wrong. They drop their idea fully formed in a performance review, like Angela did, or a team meeting and then just expect applause. But that's not how change management works. You've got to seed the idea early, which means casually introducing it. To do this, what Angela should have done is spoken to the boss beforehand, not during a performance review, and said something like, hey, I noticed that we spend a lot of time rechecking reports. If we could improve time here, we could potentially save a few hours. The key is not to mention the full solution, just enough to plant the thought that a potential solution to this problem could be coming. Because what this does is prepare the ground for you. It creates awareness without any resistance, and when the actual solution shows up later, people feel like they've already been thinking about it. This makes them more receptive and feel less caught off guard. So number 2 is socialize. So next, you've got to socialize the idea, which means testing the waters with colleagues and your boss. Float the idea you've had around, ask some questions, see what frictions come up. You could ask things like, would this help us save time? Or what concerns would we run into with this idea? Would people even want to try something different? What you're doing here is surfacing the objections before they become resistance. You're spotting the problems early instead of walking straight into them mid-meeting. Because once you understand how your idea might be perceived, you can adapt the way you present it to sidestep those hidden blockers. Now, and only now, do you bring in the actual solution? But this needs to be done carefully. You could say something like, so I've been thinking about what we talked about last week, and I tried a little test to see if we could streamline that reporting step. It worked better than expected, and it cut time down by 25%. Do you think we should explore this a bit further, you can see the tone there. It references the shared concerns and it sounds like progress that they were already involved in. And that makes it easier to say yes to because it doesn't feel like a criticism of what came before. And finally, this is the part most people overlook, and it's that you need to shield your boss. Because if they say yes to your idea, especially one that changes process or performance, they're the ones who get questioned if it goes wrong because they also need to seed, socialize, and solutionize upwards too. So you don't just show how it works, you show how it's going to protect them. Maybe it aligns with the department KPIs. Maybe it gives them something impressive to show their boss. Maybe it makes them look like they fostered a culture of improvement instead of that they were doing everything wrong the whole time. You want them to see your idea as a way that they can sponsor it without risk, because when it feels safe, they'll move on it. And when they look smart for backing you, they'll back you again in future. And if you have any challenges at work, then you could submit your questions to me, link in the description.